Welcome back, everyone. Let's bring former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. It's always a pleasure to have him on. He's also CIA director, and he made it clear he's willing to debate the most dangerous person to America's future. The president of Teachers Union, Randi Weingarten. And last week we saw the spat between the two, and now this week you amped it up with an editorial in the New York Post. Mr. Secretary, always great to talk to you. What prompted you to take it to this level?
Brian, thanks for having me on. Look, I spent 4 years working on problems abroad, keeping Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, all these bad guys away from America, keeping us more safe and more prosperous. And as I watch American kids matriculate through our schools, I see they're not learning history, they're not learning civics, they're not learning America is the most exceptional nation in history. And Randi Weingarten and the teachers unions are at the center of preventing that from happening. It is really dangerous. It's dangerous to our families, it's dangerous to parents, but our kids are growing up in a way that if they don't respect and love America and its founding and its traditions, then no matter who the next Secretary of State is or who the next CIA director is, it won't matter because the republic will fall from within.
And why do you think this comes from the biggest teachers unions in the country? They say, and you have these stats, there's 70 countries, they rank them in terms of their educational ability. And you say American students rank 35th in math, 16th in science, and 11th in reading, behind China, Estonia, Poland, and Korea, obviously South Korea, and other nations. All of this Weingarten's watch. So what do you think's happening?
They want to have the teachers unions control the education of the children, to indoctrinate them with a leftist ideology, and they don't want parents to have a say in what it is their kids are learning. We've got to go back to the traditions where parents had a real role, where students had choice. Brian, you saw this during the lockdown. Kids went even further backwards. The article talks about the fact that even everywhere, and worst of all in our inner cities, these kids lost a year and a half, 2 years of their education. To catch them up is really important. It's important for American security. It really matters to those kids and their families.
So you also point out, too, that 1 in 3 Americans could not pass the citizenship test, that we don't have a reverence for the Constitution or our founding fathers. And you think over the course of time, this is more insidious than anything bin Laden or Iran or China could do?
We can figure out how to protect America from our external foes. Right? We can figure out how to crush Chinese Communist Party. We can figure out how to counter terrorism around the world. But if our next generation, if the folks who are entering the workforce and folks who are populating our military as they grow up, if they have this central understanding that America is racist and they've read the 1619 Project more than the Declaration of Independence, and they don't understand these traditions, Brian, you can't get that back. Our founders knew this. Lincoln talked about reverence for our Constitution. If we lose that, if we lose this understanding of America in spite of all its challenges, being the greatest nation in the history of civilization, we lose it, Brian, and that would be tragic for America for sure, but for the world. They'll form their own opinions about the world, left, right, but we need to teach them the foundational ideas. And if we don't do that, Brian, I worry that the things that have made this country so exceptional, that have built this amazing military, that have built these technological advances here at home, those things will be lost. So
I've got to bring it to China. Right now, the crackdowns, we have not seen, you tell me if I'm wrong, you're the CIA guy, I have not seen this type of uprising, this pervasive, 15 provinces since 1989. And now we see China back off a little on their testing and their lockdowns. Where do you think this is heading?
Yeah, Brian, look, in the short term, it's probably going to be really hard for the Chinese people, but you can see what they're looking for. And you're right. You have that factually right. These protests are very different. It's not just the impoverished classes. These are middle-class people stepping out and saying, enough already of this crazy, massive surveillance state and lockdowns. So this is different. It's broader. I fear for what Xi Jinping will do to his own people in the coming days and weeks and months. I pray that he will back down in a way. And then ultimately, I hope we get a regime, that Chinese Communist Party regime, that changes fundamentally and begins to give people the real freedom that they're out in the streets just asking for.
Mr. Secretary, we have not spoken out firmly in support of the Iranian protesters or the Chinese protesters, and we missed an opportunity a year ago in Cuba. Why?
It's hard to explain, Brian. I don't know why. I would add to that list that we've now turned the spigots on in Venezuela, throwing the Venezuelan people to demands of Nicolas Maduro, who's a 14-time indicted drug kingpin. This is crazy stuff. This administration doesn't understand that these people simply want basic freedoms, and they seem fearful that they're going to upset some of these tyrannical leaders. We had it right in the Trump administration. We always supported people's fight for freedom. Reagan did the same. America needs to get back to that same place. I wish the Biden administration would do that.
There was a report by the DOD real quick that said that our pullout of Afghanistan was a propaganda boon for China. Do you see it that way?
A propaganda boon for China, for the North Koreans. It told our friends and allies that we can't be trusted. It was a terrible day. We lost 13 Americans. It didn't have to happen, Brian. It was truly tragic. And the world sees us as weak as a result. And I think what you see in Ukraine is, if not directly related, is certainly Vladimir Putin was supported by what he saw happen there.
He directed the CIA, Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Great column in today's New York Post.
Brian,
Thanks so much, Mr. Secretary.